Hello and welcome to another episode of your Frankly Leader podcast. And I am absolutely thrilled today to have Hols, who is founder and CEO of North Star. Beautiful human being, all round good egg. I mean, where do I stop with my beautiful descriptors of you? Welcome.
Thanks, Jen. Very kind.
Thanks for coming on the podcast and for giving up your time to do this. I think you've got a really fascinating and inspiring story to share for everybody, but I think in particular for people who are maybe starting out in their leadership career, and also for people who are like, I've got that itch to scratch about running my own business. I think the wisdom and the insight that you're going to share today is going to be really interesting for that crowd. So I'm
Fingers
really
crossed.
excited to see where our chat goes today. How are you arriving on this gloomy, stormy, wintry January day in the UK?
I'm arriving feeling quite energized, actually, in spite of the gloomy starts to the day that I've had. I think obviously having this in the diary, and always appreciate a catch up with you, whether it's like in, virtually or in person. But yeah, no, feeling good. Got a cup of tea here, which I'm cradling, kind of trying to warm myself up from the hands upwards, basically. Yeah. Cheers.
It's that kind of day. And just to
Yeah.
say, the feeling is very mutual. Like you're such a tonic to have a catch up with and to connect with, and yeah, super inspiring. But we'll get to that because there's more to say about that. So let's start where you are now, because this is essentially where your leadership journey began, isn't it? So
Yes.
for
Yeah.
people out there who don't know you and your business, North Star Coffee, tell us a little bit about where it all began and what it is that you do.
Okay, so yes, we began the business. We started the business pretty much straight out of university. It was very much driven by a kind of personal responsibility, to be honest, that I particularly felt, having conducted my final year research with smallholder coffee producers in Kenya, asking them about their lives and how positively or negatively they'd been affected by being involved with fair trade certified cooperatives. And so we kind of, my husband and I, who met at university, we embarked on a 3-month research trip and spent lots of time really sort of getting to understand the intricacies of the coffee supply chain. And as a result, really felt this kind of personal calling to kind of come back and try and connect consumer to producer a little bit more effectively, because we realized that we didn't have a clue before we went, but we really saw it plain as day how at risk the coffee supply chain and the coffee industry is if we kind of continue going down this road of very kind of extractivist, sort of exploiting mindset, of kind of taking value essentially, and really not considering the needs of those that we're reliant upon the most at the heart of the supply chain. So we kind of finished uni with a really clear idea of what we wanted to do, which was not at all to have our own business. If we could have done this work essentially for somebody else, we absolutely would have opted for that route. I don't think we had we had no belief or sort of confidence or vision of ourselves ever being business owners or leaders. We very much, I think I'm a fantastic employee. If I'd have had the chance, I think I would have really excelled in as an employee elsewhere.
Yeah, no doubt you would.
It just never happened, because ultimately we graduated from uni in Newcastle. We came back to our home city of Leeds, and there was no coffee roastery in what is the third largest city in the UK. And so we kind of were like, well, we're not going to get anywhere if the city doesn't have a resource essentially to build a coffee scene, an independent coffee scene that thrives on quality and on connecting consumer to the product through that exceptional quality and storytelling that can come from having a product with much more kind of provenance, really. So it was as simple as that. We kind of were quite naive. We had no big adult-like responsibilities. We didn't have a mortgage, we didn't have kids. And we kind of just we had a naive belief that, you know, we could kind of dive in and build something of value and, you know, with real kind of kindness at its core, I think, because I think we've both just been terrified actually of, like, we'd grown up watching The Apprentice and Dragon's Den and things like that. And that was very much our view of a business, you know, and I think that's just not within us, that sort of ruthless kind of approach to doing business. And so very quickly we realized we wanted to do it our way, really prioritizing just being kind and sort of growing a business that, you know, people thrived in. Essentially, that's always what's been come very naturally to us, because we don't know any other way of being, essentially. But yeah, our leadership journey as a result was kind of a baptism of fire, because it wasn't something we looked for, that we intentionally built. We actually never thought we would have a team, you know, let alone the kind of team that we have today. So I've kind of spent a while talking about the origins of our story, but ultimately North Star as a business today, we're a kind of B2B, B2C and retail coffee company. We employ 36 people across the whole business. And yeah, to know how that happened. Basically, we're 12 years in
Amazing.
now.
I mean, there's a
Thank
lot I
you.
want to unpack in there, but like the thing from what you've said recently that I think is really interesting is the fact that you know your references were TV references and you knew that wasn't you, so
Yes.
you had no map to
No.
follow. Oh, this is how it was supposed to do things here,
Mm-hmm.
which can be both a gift and a curse, right? Because I'm thinking, like, on the one hand, like, oh my God, you're like, well, where do we begin? And how do we know we're doing it right? And all those
Yeah.
questions about, well, just questions, like the questions
Mm-hmm.
that you must have had. But also on the flip side, the freedom to not be constrained by, or this is how it's always been, or this is how it's supposed to be, which I think a lot of other
Yes.
people and other businesses can get a bit tangled up in.
Mm.
So I see it as both a blessing and a burden in some ways.
Yes. I think sometimes we wish that we'd have had that kind of perspective that comes from elsewhere, you know, to be able to see it as more of a blessing than the curse that
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
maybe felt. Because I think, you know, not having that kind of blueprint or role model, I suppose, to actually like look to and sort of follow. I mean, obviously we found them like further down the line, but you know, in those early days when we were 22, 23 at the time, and then we kind of, particularly when we opened the first coffee shop, and we suddenly went from a team of 3 to like 12, I think, at the time. And, you know, employing people that were kind of our age, that were, you know, experiencing the same life sort of stuff that we were, trying to, you know, carve out a career, trying to buy a house.
Mhm.
It was just like we were just kind of we were just sort of all in there together figuring it out. And I think it was so much more stressful and kind of personally affecting for Crag and I, because of the fact we were kind of in there blindly trying to figure it out with no blueprint, and actually with so many people around us telling us we had to default to that kind of traditional way of running a business. You know, whenever we ran into an HR issue, you know, the only resource you can access as a business our size is very like paperwork, policy heavy, you know, and you know, very much about alleviating risk to the business, and really takes the kind of human element, the thing that kind of comes actually quite naturally to me, completely rips it apart from that. So we had a good kind of, to be honest, the first 7 or 8 years, I would say, of our business was really exhausting, because it was asking us to be people we just did not want to be,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
And what a great insight for all of us, like how energy draining and life sapping it is when you're trying to
Yeah.
like shape shift yourself into somebody else's expectation of what good looks like, rather than finding
Absolutely.
enough space to untap your own potential and find your own way of doing things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I love that message. Before we dive in, just one other thing I want to pick up on from what you've just said is coffee. So,
Mm-hmm.
for individuals at home watching or listening to this with their cup of coffee, what do I need to know as an individual about the impact of coffee so that I can maybe make some better choices?
Yes, it's a great question, and thank you for giving me the platform to be able to dive into it. So, I think it's really easy to see coffee as a kind of commodity because it is a commodity. It's the second most valued commodity in the world after oil. But the thing that makes coffee super different, and to be honest, tea and chocolate, all of these sorts of industries, is that it is a commodity that is completely reliant on, well, really around 120 million sort of smallholder families across the world,
Mm.
to actually kind of cultivate it, harvest it, process it, and get it into our cups. And unlike chocolate, maybe it's something that most of us rely upon every single day. It's something that kickstarts our day, and it's often easy to overlook, the people that lie behind the cup. And the context for how coffee came to be the second most valued commodity in the world is that it was essentially a non-native crop. Where it grows now, it's native to Ethiopia, but not to anywhere else that it grows in that coffee belt between the tropics. And it was essentially spread through colonialism, which means that it was a industry established entirely on models of slave labor.
Mm.
So it's never been priced taking into account the true cost of labour, and particularly from the perspective of what it takes for those business models to be viable and attractive to the people that we're reliant upon, to, like I say, harvest it, cultivate it. And what has happened essentially is we're kind of a couple of centuries into really sort of imbalanced ways of working, imbalanced power dynamics between buyer and producer, producers kind of consistently being fueled into a cycle of debts through pricing systems that do not accurately reflect the cost of production, let alone a profit. And then you throw climate change into the mix and climate related events, which are kind of increasing environmental volatility stacked on top of economic volatility. And quite understandably, we're in a situation now where the average age of the coffee producers is 57 plus,
Mm.
because why on earth would you want to farm coffee in such such like challenging conditions, first and foremost? Really, really little guarantee to actually cover your costs, let alone, give you a living income. So that's kind of where we're at, and it's so serious that there's already research happening with things like dates. We're sort of grinding them and roasting them in the oven to see if we can kind of replace coffee with another food product like that. Kew Gardens is really, really involved in research around climate resistant varietals and trying to look at how to make the species overall much more climate resistant, because it's just so under threat. And yeah, it's a real question mark that there is over coffee's future, and not hundreds of years from now, like 30 years from now. That's kind of
Yeah.
a very, very realistic expectation. So it's of paramount importance that anybody listening to this, or anybody who I manage to speak to, I try and instill within them the importance of just thinking around what system you are upholding, and what alternative way of working you're supporting.
Yeah.
Really sort of taking into account that as a consumer you have a direct influence on how suppliers work, how the entire supply chain works, and how motivated you can essentially, like, how can you create motivation within a coffee producer to stay producing coffee,
Yeah.
basically, because of how you're purchasing.
So that, with that in mind, then, for those people out there that are thinking, "Oh, I want to play my part," like, what should
Mm-hmm.
they be looking for when they go looking for coffee?
Well, it's a really good question, and it's unfortunate. I wish it was more simple to answer, but
Mm.
because as an industry, there is so much greenwashing, as you can imagine, that happens. I mean, my entire dissertation was looking at fair trade, which is one of the most well-known kind of certification schemes for ethical sourcing. And fair trade has done a lot of fantastic work, and I think it continues to do a lot of fantastic work, but it's absolutely not enough. That's the kind of conclusion there. I think, yeah, it's really hard to sort of stand behind what we're doing. I think we are in a position where we are trying to test and learn and kind of actually listen. I think that's kind of what sets our approach apart in terms of what you'd find on your supermarket shelves, is like we're sort of, first of all, not adopting a one size fits all model. We're trying to curate really sort of deep, respectful, long-term partnerships with trusted supply partners, where we actually can kind of ask them about their challenges, which are going to be very different in El Salvador as opposed to Rwanda, and will require a slightly different approach in terms of how we work. I think as a consumer, buying from small independent, suppliers is always a good way to go. There tends to be an expectation on companies like that to kind of set themselves up with sort of social and environmental values at the heart of their sort of operation. It's not a given, and I think as a consumer, I would encourage you to ask questions. And I think that's the best thing that you can kind of do without wanting to take joy out of your morning brew and kind of put a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. It's really reassuring if your coffee, first of all, if it is able to list where it's come from. A lot of the stuff that you would buy on the supermarket shelves will just sort of say the name of the blend, and have really kind of unknown components, or if they do, they might be just the country. I think if you can kind of get to a point where you're getting to a single farm reference, then that's a really good starting place.
And things like B Corp, should we look for organisations that have gone through B Corp certification? Is that a good indication that they're trying at least to do the right thing?
I think so. I mean, I know B Corp it can be quite contentious. There's lots of people. It's grown massively in popularity. I think we're a B Corp, and I guess I'm going to say that we didn't have to be, in the sense that we had a very clear purpose and mission and vision at the heart of what we do, and we have done from day one. And we didn't require B Corp to help us get there. But what I would say about B Corp is it constantly pushes you to improve and improve and improve what you do. And as a growing organisation under lots of pressures, it could be quite easy to allow not necessarily the kind of purpose at the heart of your business, but there's so many areas to running a business that really, really benefit from the B Corp assessment, in terms of how decisions are made, which it comes down to how the structure of your business, how do you inform your employees, like how do you create a transparent way of working your employees and what your offer is to them in terms of benefits, flexible working, the environment that they are part of, all your environmental work is captured in that assessment.
So you are a leader. You're in a leadership position now. I mean, you're a founder and CEO of North Star Coffee. So tell us, what, if anything, I mean, there might be nothing, what, if anything, do you enjoy about being a leader now that you're in that leadership position?
No, I actually do genuinely really, really enjoy my job now. I think I've kind of made, when I founded North Star with Crag, my role was very much on as the coffee person. I'd kind of, I'd been fortunate to be able to do my like tasting qualification, to do lots of like formal learning around coffee. I became a kind of sensory skills coach, trainer, and did lots of travel and really kind of formulated our approach to kind of ethical procurement at North Star. So for the first, like I'd say like 8 years at North Star, that was really my bag. My entire area was sort of focused on like the kind of the product, I suppose, and sort of like the really carving out a platform for what we wanted to say about it, and the kind of language we wanted to kind of get people used to using when talking about coffee. So there was a period when it became clear my role had to actually develop into something else for the business, because where we'd got to, ultimately, like, I was doing the best job in the business in that, it was something I felt so confident in, kind of could do in my sleep, got to do all of the gorgeous traveling, the kind of relationship building with our sort of supply partners, and then had the joyous job of representing that to our customers. It was really the best job. And I think when it became clear that the business needed me to actually do something else, which was, to kind of really start to answer the questions around what we wanted to do, like long term, what culture we needed to kind of get there, and how we needed to kind of tie all parts of the business together. I kind of went on a real I guess a period of time where I really resisted that and kind of tried to sort of um what's the word, like not undermine it, but I guess like undersell it. I still do a little bit, have a bit of a kind of bit of trouble really saying yes, I'm the CEO, because it feels quite a grand
Yeah.
title, for sort of what we're doing, but ultimately does represent the job I'm kind of doing, so I'm sort of trying to make my peace with it. And so, yeah, had a kind of iffy road into it, and it sort of collided at the same time as, parental leave and motherhood and the change in identity that kind of forces. So I had a real kind of, wild few years, to be honest, where I was really trying to understand who I was and what the role was I needed to do. But I think, having said that and having come through the other side of taking time off, for parental leave, and I'm back in the sort of driving seat, I actually really am kind of thriving at the moment, I would say, and really enjoying having what I love about the job I now do is sort of is the holding it all. I hate it in the sense that, like, that's also the downside. But having the kind of unique perspective that I have in this position to sort of see all parts of the business alongside my view of where we want to get to, and sort of, like pinpointing the kind of people within the business that are going to help us get to that point. And they might not even know it yet, but I do. And I kind of have this like little master plan, in terms of how we're going to get to that point. It's a really enjoyable part of what I do, I think, is just holding that perspective.
Yeah, and what I think what you're referencing there a little bit is the privilege that can come with that responsibility, knowing that, you're there to unlock the potential in others and to empower them if they choose to accept the challenge, to do some of their
Yes.
best work and to thrive themselves. It
Yeah.
can be a privilege as well as a burden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked to us a little bit about your journey and what you love about it. Is there anything that you find really hard about being a leader? What goes onto that list?
Um, yeah, I think I think the fact that the book stops with me, basically, that is just that there's times where I just want to kind of disappear and sort of not engage with anything to do with work, to really sort of turn off that part of my brain and kind of see who I am outside of that, and it has felt really challenging in the past. I think because we love what we do so much, the boundary between what's work and what's play is really foggy. It's really unclear, how do you sort of separate even just going to a coffee shop with a friend from like what we do, when I'm there subconsciously looking at the workflow behind the bar. Whose coffee are they using? Why are they not using ours?
Yeah.
How well trained are the team? Like, what could we do to help? It's really, really hard to sort of switch that off, because also I love coffie shops. I love them as a space. I love spending time in them. I love food and drink. I love hospitality. I love independent businesses in that space. So that's quite challenging because it's really I think to answer your question, to bring it back in terms of what's hard about being a leader there is like reining myself in sometimes and sort of I have got such a clear vision around what we kind of want to deliver, but really sort of understanding that that's in the hands of a team of people who have objectives and ways of working that are really important to respect. And I can't kind of just go in and be like, scratch that, we're doing this, as much as sometimes there's been a need to really quickly change direction, like in the pandemic, for instance, and that was a kind of non-negotiable. We can't do this anymore. We're not legally allowed to. We have to do this. But yeah, I think the constant frustration of never quite being where we want to be is something I really struggle with. And I'm trying to see that as a great thing because I've always got stuff to do.
Yeah.
I keep, the whole team was saying that the other day, like, gosh, there's so much to do. And I'm like, yeah, great. You're going to be employed for a few more years. That's brilliant, like fantastic. So, I think just, yeah, I don't know how to sort of summarize that, but just sort of holding it all is by far the worst part of kind of being a founder as well, as a
Mm.
leader.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
thinking that. Like, I think what you're speaking to, um, through my eyes, is the role that the leader holds, probably more than anyone else in an organization, to be able to look far enough ahead. And I think
Mm,
most leaders don't look far enough ahead, but
mm,
to really look to the long-term future, see what's coming over the horizon, and then to kind of like marry that with the resources
where
that
you
you
are
have
now.
available to you, and kind of like keep re-engineering those resources so that
Yeah.
they're agile enough to kind of meet the
Mm,
vision that you've set and seen for
mm,
yourself.
yeah.
And I think another really important point, well, it's a curiosity, I suppose, that came up for me. And I was thinking about the difference between when you're the founder of an organization and you've
Mm,
built the business from the ground up, and particularly for you, like having never really worked anywhere else, versus
mm,
a CEO or director that gets hired into a business that already exists. Like they don't have that same emotional loyalty, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Maybe even beyond emotional, maybe it's more of a kind of spiritual,
Yeah.
psychological loyalty to this thing that was, that you literally planted the seed. So
Mm.
you're there's a lot of you in it, I guess, as opposed to
Oh,
someone who
so
comes
much.
in that, maybe could
Yeah.
hold it a little bit lighter.
Yeah, we're also like a public facing company in that we produce
Mm,
something physical that, people form their own relationships with. So it is incredibly personal. So much it happened, as we were in our early 20s, throughout that entire decade of our lives, which is like when you're figuring out who you are and what your
yeah.
identity is. So much of our identity is wrapped up in North Star. And everything feels very personal. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to actually get our offer and sort of approach back to where it was when it was just Crag and I. That's actually like because of the fact that we founded it and kind of really sort of carved out, this is how we want, this is what we want to offer our customers, this, it's this level of engagement and care. And then obviously you kind of grow and expand, and I feel like we're trying to constantly claw back, whilst growing, constantly trying to bring it back to sort of
Yeah.
safeguarding that initial guiding North Star that we had, which was, very, very focused on delighting customers and sort of, forming really authentic relationships, whether you were somebody who had popped by the roastery to pick up a bag to have in your kitchen, or, one of the early wholesale customers we kind of landed to support us. So yeah, it is very personal, and it's, spirit. I think I kind of, there's something quite spiritual about it as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest lesson that you've learned so far about being a leader?
Oh gosh. um I mean, I think you and I obviously are both massive Brene Brown fans, and I think, that was how I came to find you actually and like work with you, because I just kind of found some of her work, and I think I referenced at the start, that I really wanted to champion an approach that felt like I could be my authentic self in a
Mm.
leadership setting. And for so many years, I essentially felt like a complete, I felt inadequate because I was being told that approach was not going to work, that it was naive to think it could work. And I was kind of trying to sort of like embody some of the characteristics that really don't come very naturally to me.
Mm.
And then I think it was, yeah, through the pandemic years, I sort of found her teachings around the fact that no, it's really powerful to be vulnerable, to sort of not have all the answers, to not have to have all the answers, and to just be honest about that and to just be human. I think like it's so, we'd got to a point where, yeah, like the success of North Star was so closely tied to our life, and how good our lives felt, I suppose, because we'd put everything into it, and everything was depending on it. That everything just felt really serious and like, really kind of, we've got to get this right, and it felt really hard and really heavy. And we're actually in a really fun business. Like, what we do is so fun.
Yeah.
And it brings so much fun and joy to the lives
Mm,
of our customers. And I was kind of getting a bit tired of feeling so tired about work. That's
yeah.
not, I think, like, there's not those traditional perks of owning your own business when it comes to working in the coffee industry, and when it comes to choosing the path we've chosen, which is very organic, very sort of, you know, and it's sometimes the road less traveled. We've kind of taken harder routes to get to where we've got
Mm,
to, and as a result, like, we're not flooded with all of the perks that often come from being a business owner. So the perk that we do have, and that we've always cherished, my dad actually always told me, like, how what he really wanted for me was to just find a job that I absolutely adored and did not dread, getting up for on a Monday morning. Because I think,
brilliant career advice to have. I
yeah,
mean, I
he
got
also
told to get
told me,
get a job that was reliable and stable and would give you a financial security.
yeah,
I never got told to follow a joy. I wish I had
yeah,
been.
yeah, he felt really strongly about that, and he said the other amazing thing he told me was, if you can just become an expert in something really specific. So he was like, if you're gonna, like, choose ice cream and become an expert ice cream maker. I remember he always said that, and I kind of, again, subliminally, have sort of taken some of that advice on, which I'll be forever grateful to him for. But I think, yeah, it definitely, I think with the pandemic, we also had Brexit. There was so much going on that was so challenging, and I just suddenly was like, it shouldn't feel this, like, unenjoyable. Like, we're not in it for this. Like, it needs to feel much more enjoyable. And I realized, that it was because we were kind of acting out of sync with ourselves, our true selves, really, and kind of going in a direction we actually didn't want to go in. So I think, yeah, really realizing that we could make that decision, like, that we could put the brakes on and sort of steer the ship into the direction we wanted to go in, that we could do so, and just be really open with people about the fact that we didn't necessarily know, kind of where that was going to take us, and that we would, keep being transparent about it.
I
Yeah,
think
it's that
one,
whole bringing your whole self.
yeah, I was just going to say that, and I think beyond your father's advice, which is like gold
Mm.
dust, I think we're seeing in the world we're living at the moment as well that there isn't a right way. COVID
Mm.
gave us that first opportunity to go, we don't have to have a presenteeism culture, actually. We can
Yes.
work in lots of different ways. And it kind of like blew the lid off
Mm-hmm.
workplace well-being and working and culture and doing things in different ways. And I think the same is true for leadership. Like, we're seeing that at the moment. We're seeing really strong examples of people at extreme types of leadership around the world.
Yeah.
And actually, like, what's good about that is when people see how shit it can be, like, it makes the people that actually want to do it in a really healthy way, it makes them rally in some ways to go, no, 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 there are better ways of doing this.
Yeah,
We could all be
absolutely.
inspired by everyone. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that thing in the middle of that is figure out what's your way of leading that brings you joy, and allows you to bring your whole person, so that you're not trying to squash yourself into somebody else's template.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, great
Hard
advice.
agree. Yeah.
I'm going to change gears a little bit, and we've talked quite a lot. So sustainability, and what does it mean to be a sustainable leader? It's like a hot topic at the moment, and something I'm passionate about. So we've talked a little bit about all the great work that you do, particularly around climate change in your business. When you think more broadly to other businesses, what do you think are the barriers to other organisations taking more action? So what do you think the things are that get in the way of businesses taking more action?
Um, I think I think probably the things that get in the way of individuals taking more action,
Mhm.
it's kind of a sense of maybe overwhelm, of not knowing where to start, of things just feeling too massive, and like, is there much point us even doing this anyway? Is it going to affect any change when you see X, Y, and Z examples of, like, just terrible sort of environmental action by, yeah, some of the world's leaders. And so I think that's a big thing, and that's something that I think we put a lot of time into really trying to focus our work onto a particular area, I think that's kind of something I would strongly advise businesses to do, is pick a lane. Basically, don't try and do everything. And it's quite difficult when you go through the B Corp process, because it's almost like you see everything you could be doing for points essentially, but also you're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, I've not thought of that. But everything, there's a business case to everything, and I think for businesses to actually be effective in this area, it is about proving that you can be profitable because of your focus on planet and people, and not in spite of it. So I think, getting really clear on where your area of focus is going to be, being okay with the fact that you're doing what you can in that area, is a good starting point. I think that's me being generous in assuming that businesses want to do, to sort of make changes. I think when they don't want to make changes, the barriers are the fact that policy and kind of governance in this country still is not making it a necessity, which I think is just mind-blowing to me, that you are still allowed to set up a business that is exploitative and damaging. I just don't understand why that is still okay, like from a policy point of view, why that is still okay. And I think, there's things like the Better Business Act and, a lot of good movements and initiatives happening in that space. And surely that's going to have to change soon, surely. Because that's just, that's like, we might as well, it feels a bit kind of like, why are any of us bothering when you can still behave like that, really, as a business? So that's a major one. And I think it's a bit like, you remember when the plastic bag charge came in, which was an amazingly effective movement. We all now pretty much have reusable bags, granted millions of them in a cupboard. But ultimately that was really effective in showing people that no, you should be penalised for essentially environmentally damaging behaviour. And I think, unfortunately, in a business, it's all too often the case that you're actually penalised for opting for the more sustainable option, in terms of the fact that for our home compostable packaging, for instance, we're probably paying 3 times the price than, we would have to for a plastic option. And I think that is a real problem, because again, when it comes to that whole business case, it is just too easy to not make the right choice at the moment. We're lucky in that, like, we don't have any external investment in North Star. It's just us two as decision makers, essentially. So we're able to kind of stick to the things and the causes that we feel really strongly about, and in some cases be guinea pigs for, testing new materials out or new ways of working, in the hope that more businesses adopt it, and then it becomes more affordable for everybody. But I think that's a major issue for a lot of businesses, is that actually, to be sustainable or to be environmentally responsible, all too often it comes with a real cost. Even B Corp, that costs us about $3,500 a year. We've got to pay for carbon footprint mapping, so many costs to sort of sustainability, which I'm not saying are wrong and shouldn't be there, but where is the penalisation for not being sustainable? That's that, it's not about bribing people to be sustainable through lower pricing, but it's like at least put a levy or something on unsustainable practices.
I agree with all of what you're saying, and I think there's I'm always looking for where's the low-hanging fruit. And for those that want to, like, one of the things from what you've just said, I think it's really interesting, is what I call the when I then I syndrome. When we've got enough profit, then we'll start to look at doing more. When we've got to this size, then we'll look to do more. And I always like flip that, like what you guys have done. Like, you've literally started with that intention, and profit has followed.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be one before the other. And I think if I could build on your answer and say to anyone thinking about it, bed it in from the start, and you will see your profits soar.
But also, if it's not built in from the start, it's not too late. It's just about putting the resource into doing that work now, to really build a strategy that integrates impact with your growth, to ensure that all of your activities contribute towards creating impact in some way. And to do that, you just need to just get a bit more focused on, even if you're not a purpose, led organization, or you didn't start with a mission, there is absolutely a cause or something that will kind of be of personal importance to the founders, or that will be in some way adjacent to the industry that you're in. Just start there and kind of build it back. And it's, yeah, I think we are seeing there's a huge growing trend nowadays for organizations doing that are absolutely more, valuable to investors, or it's where we're at, like,
Yeah.
and it's led by consumers. It's the kind of growing interest from a consumer point of view in companies that have that part of their offering.
Yeah. So if you were to look into the future, what do you think are the key skills that leaders need to have? And would you summarize the key skills that you think leaders need to have to face the future that's coming?
I mean, it goes without. I think all leaders have to have resilience, regardless of regardless of what we're facing now or not. I think that's always been a thing, the ability to kind of, pick yourself up. And I suppose that comes from, I'm a big believer in things like gratitude, and, I think, really, really sort of acknowledging when times are good, to be able to kind of weather the storm of worse times when they come. I think humility is a big one as well, because ultimately none of us know what we're facing. None of it, we're kind of going into unprecedented ways of working and times, and we're all going to be kind of figuring it out and responding. And I think bringing it back to just being human, like, I've spent a lot of time recently in rooms with some real kind of businessy people, and you just realize they're just, we're all just human. And I think, when you embrace that, and you embrace, the kind of humility that comes from seeing that, you are arguably better equipped for a future that is uncertain, that is going to put us in, kind of situations that we've not faced before, that we're going to have to, like I say, figure it out. I think those are, I could go on, but I think that was quite a focused answer, so I'll leave it there.
And I love those things. That brings us to the final question. Obviously, you love your job now, but if you could do any other job in the world, what would you choose to do if you couldn't do what you're doing now?
Gosh, I think any job that you can make money from that doesn't feel like a job, basically, is surely the dream. And kind of where I am now sometimes. I think, there's parts of my personality that have kind of been really sidelined, as I've had to focus on work and family and all the rest of it, but they kind of live on a vision board of when I then I attitude. And that's things like, any kind of crafting. I really enjoy, like, being creative, and so probably, really learning how to be a potter. We've obviously kind of interacted a lot with bakeries and things over the time of having our coffee shops, and if I could kind of get really great at a skill set like that, not necessarily getting up at like 4 a.m. and baking bread, but that kind of, I'd actually love to go to like cookery school and really sort of learn, the sort of technical skill set, and just be able to create lovely things, just, because not necessarily to have to sell them, basically.
Yeah, and there's all that love that exists in you that you put into your business. It's there again, isn't it? Wanting to feed people beautiful pastries.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
it's been an absolute pleasure. I love the depth and the breadth of our conversations always, but particularly this one. And just to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I'm so deeply grateful.
Thanks, Jen.
Privileged to get to work alongside you as well, but so grateful that you've given up your time to share your wisdom for everyone that's going to watch and listen to this as well. So thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me. It was a lovely conversation.
Have a great day.
Thank you.